morning, we're learning at Chus Refuah Shlema for Ran Chai Baserach. We're starting the new parak on Daf Lam and Aleph on the base on the bottom. This Mishnah should be familiar. We've seen it. It was referenced in the Gemara earlier. Kalap Psulan Sheshachtu Shchitashim Kseir. Any puzzle, someone who's puzzle for the reasons that the Mishnah is going to say, if they do the shchita is kosher. Unlike the other avodas hadam, right? The shchita, kabbalah, elocha, and zrika. Unlike the other three, shchita can be done by a puzzle. Shchita ksheir bezarim could be done by a zar, someone who's not a kayan. Ubenashim could be done by women, by avadim, by a slave, ubetmeim, even by someone who's tummy. The Gemara is going to discuss some of the issues that relate to having a tummy do it, but the problem with the tummy is not one might think. So Rashi says, "Ubetmeim, but tummy sheretz kamar she'enu matama kli." We're talking about a tummy sheretz who's not matama the kli. If a tummy mace were to do the shchita, he would be holding a knife to shecht. The knife would become tummy tumas mace, and it would be matama the kachim. After you finish shechting, you'll have basar that is going to become tummy from the kli. All right. So we're talking about tummy sheretz as opposed to tummy mace. The lav avatomahu, or a tummy mace, or it could be talking about a tummy mace. He used a reed and he sharpened the reed and used that for the shchita, so that again the tummy is not touching the meat. Al besaken loy, you can't use a tummy mace, can't use a knife. Shumitamas hasaken, hasaken tamas habasa. We're also talking about where he used a long knife to shech, as the Gemara is going to explain. Someone whose tummy can't go into the Beis Hamikdash. So how is he going to shecht a carbon if he's tummy? Forgetting about him doing the actual avodah, he can't go in there. So it's talking about where he stood outside the doors and used a long knife. Sak Gemara, va'afilu b'kachei kachim. This is true that they could do the avodah. All these people, including the tamei, is even by kachei kachim, not just kachei kal. But the tamei cannot touch the basar, like we explained in Rashi. It has to be, first of all, he can't touch it directly himself. He has to use a knife, but not touch the basar. And in addition to what Rashi explained, why even using a knife is not going to be metama. But certainly he can't go ahead and touch the animal after he shechts it. You're looking very skeptical.
If it's Tumas Sheretz, it's not Matama, so you still can't touch it.
But Tumas Sheretz is not Matama Kli, but he's going to go to Matama, but the Basa. But there's different things that have different levels of being able to be Mekabel Tuma, to accept Tuma. So a Basar, Eichel has a higher level, could be makabel more easily than a kli. Lefikach, so as we said, so a puzzle can do the shchita. Lefikach ein paislam machshava. There's a downside to that which a puzzle can do the shchita. That means, conversely, that if a puzzle does the shchita and has a machshavas chutz l'zmani or chutz l'mkaimai, it's going to puzzle the carbon. Whereas if the puzzle does an avodah, as we're going to see, that he's not, if a puzzle does an avodah, he's not able to do it, doesn't puzzle the avodah. I was going to say, Zak the Mishnah, v'chulan, and this is also from the Mishnah, the Gemara had mentioned this before. V'chulan, shekiblu as adam, if all of these sulin, rather than doing shchita, they did a kabbalah, they makabel adam chutz l'zmani chutz l'mkaimei. They can go. It's not going to passel the whole carbon because this avodah wasn't an avodah sadam. An avodah sadam done by someone who's a apostle is not considered that they did an avodah, and therefore the machshava that's done is not going to passel it, and therefore you can go back and redo it. Zok to Gemara. Kibel hakosher b'nasan lepasel if a kosher, someone who was kosher, was makabel the dam, so he had the shchita done properly, and then he had the kabbalah done properly, and then he gave it to someone who's pasul, yachzel kosher. He should return it to the person who's kosher. It's not. He's not going to be able to do the halacha, the pasul. You're going to have to give it back to the kosher to do the halacha. Kibul b'yamina v'nasan l'smaila yachzel l'yamina. The avodas have to be done with the person's right hand. So if the kohen took it with his right hand, he did the kabbalah in his right hand, and then he put it to his left hand, he has to put it back into his right hand, so he could go ahead and do the halacha holding it in his right hand. If he took it in a kli kodesh, a kli sharis that was makudesh, and he put it in a kli chal, again, he's not going to be able to do halacha with the kli chal, so he has to put it back in a kli kodesh. Nishbach min a kli ala ritzba va'asru, if the dam spilled out of the kli sharis onto the floor, and he gathered it up, kosher, it's kosher. Well, we said before that once when the dam goes on the ground, it's puzzle. That was talking about where it went directly from the animal onto the floor. That means if it never went into the kli sharis, you never had a kabbalah, that's going to puzzle. Like we said, we learned from a pasuk that has to go directly from the animal into the kli sharis. So that's irretrievable. Once that happens, then the carbon is puzzle. But if you already did the kabbalah and then it fell onto the floor, there's no pasuk saying that that's going to puzzle. Finally, we have the last part that, again, the Gemara before explained in more detail. Nosnu al gabe hakevesh shaloi keneged hayisod, which we had said was talking about the case of it would depend. There were two possibilities. They were talking about according to the Manda Amar, who says that shaloi b'mkaim is kim kaimei dami. So then it's talking about a apostle who did this. So apostle that put it on the keves, on the kevesh, on the ramp going up to the mizbeach. Shaloi keneged hayisod, or if he did it on the wall, but not opposite the yisod, on a part of the side of the mizbeach that's not proper to put the dam. He put that which was supposed to be on top, on bottom, on top. That which was supposed to be on top, on bottom. Where he did that which was supposed to go onto the other mizbeach, or into the inside of the heichel, opposite the parochos, or on the mizbeach, and he put it instead on the mizbeach hachitzon, or vice versa. In yesh dam nefesh, if there remains other dam, yachzar kosher b'yikabel, should go ahead and redo it, because we're talking about either because we're going according to the Manda Amar, that we're talking about where a puzzle did it, so that's why it's going to be yachzar kosher b'yikabel, or it's going to be according to the Manda Amar that shaloi b'mkaim is lav kim kaimei dami, and that's why it wasn't a valid nesina that would puzzle it from going further. That's the Gemara. Gemara no longer is talking about the intricacies really of this Mishnah that relate to what we talked about before. We're going back to the first end of the Mishnah. We said a puzzle that does the shechita is kosher. From the lashon of the Mishnah, shachtu the eved in lechatchila. The lashon shachtu is mashma. It sounds like that it's only a make do. It's if you did it, if a puzzle shechted, a zar shechted, or an isha shechted, that's okay. But lechatchila, it's better to have a kosher shechted. Raminu, I'll ask a question. V'shachat. We learn from the pasuk shchita bezar ksher, shchita ksher bezar v'benashim avadim v'tmeim, afilu b'kachem kachem. We learn out from the pasuk that says v'shachat, as we're going to see from the pasuk in a minute. The Gemara is going to explain a little better that shchita by a zar is kosher, and which is the same lashon of the Mishnah. That means even with a zar, with a woman, with avadim, and with tmeim, and even by kachem kachem. You might say maybe shchita is only with kehanim. Amrit v'chimiyayim basa. Where would it come from that shchita should be by kehanim? Mechlal shenema. It comes to the klal from the general rule, which is the obvious general rule. The Torah says a general rule that all the avodas, tishmu es kunasam l'chol dvar mizbeach, anything that you do on the mizbeach, all the avodas should be done by kehanim. So that's the general rule. So why would I say? So we need something to take us out of that rule for shechita and say that that's not the case. That you don't need a kayin kasha. So yachal ab b'shechita. I might say that even includes shechita. Tamalai mavashachat as ban habakal lefnei Hashem ve'krivay. The pasuk says, "Shachas ben habakal lefnei Hashem ve'krivay b'nei Aaron hakoynim es Adam v'zarkos Adam al mizbech savev asher pesach hayil mayid." So we say mikabal of elach mitzvah kahuna. Ve'krivu, since the pasuk says ve'krivu b'nei Aaron hakoyanim, and we learned all the way back on Daf Dalet that hekrivu, Rashi says hekrivu refers to Kabbalah since it comes right after the shechita, so it means that it's talking about Kabbalah. And the Torah says on that the bnei Aaron hakoyanim have to do it. So we learn out the shachat, since it doesn't say on that bnei Aaron hakoyanim that it doesn't need to be with a kosher. So we extend it. It's not just kehanim. It's also not. It doesn't have to be. It could even be zarim. It could even be noshim. It could be avodim and tmei. Since the mitzvah kahuna is only from Kabbalah and on, so shechita is kosher with everyone. So Dr. Gemara, who adin dafilu lechatchila nami. So we're left with our question, right? We're learning out from a pasuk that you can do the shechita with anyone. So why did our Mishnah say shachtu if they shechted? It should be lechatchila. The pasuk is saying that you could do the shechita with anyone. Why would I say that the pasuk means only b'diavad? So who then afilu lechatchila nami? Einach nami from the pasuk would say lechatchila. Mishum the boy lebisne tmeim the lechatchila loy zerushem yigva basa tanash shachtu. Since we're not just talking about a psul of zar or noshim or evet, but we're also saying the psul of tameh is kosher. That by a tameh we prefer not to have a tameh. The chacham magayzer lechatchila not to use a tameh because of as we explained in the Mishnah, you have all this whole complicated procedure to do by a tameh, right? You have to worry about the knife making a tameh. You have to worry about the tummy going into the Beis Hamikdash. So that is not an ideal situation. So therefore we say b'diavad. But enechanami b'deraisa it would be lechatchila. Correct the Gemara, the tummy diavad shaper dummy. Is tummy really allowed even b'diavad? Right? We said so. We came in the Mishnah and we said that all these things shechita can be done by any of the psulim, including a tameh. And we said the reason why it was said in the lashon of b'diavad is because of the tameh. The Gemara asks, can tameh be done at all? Can tameh do a shechita at all? Ramini, I'll ask you a question. The pasuk says v'samach and it says v'shachat. The pasuk says in the first pasuk on Vayikra, in the first parak of Vayikra and Dalet, pasuk Dalet, v'samach yad al rosh ha'olav v'nirtzah lo lechaper alav. So it didn't have to do smicha. And then the next pasuk says v'shachat is ben habakal of Hashem v'kriv b'nei Aaron hakoynes Adam. This is all on the carbon oila. Ma smicha b'tahirim, av shechita b'tahirim. So we learn out just like smicha has to be b'tahirim, because like Rashi says, smicha tahirim, as the Gemara is going to explain later on, because the smicha has to be done physically, and a tameh is not allowed to go into the Beis Hamikdash, so it must be b'tahirim. So shechita also, we learn from this hekesh, since we say the samach, which is the smicha, and the shachat, and the shechita next to each other, so the shechita also has to be b'tahirim. So that's mashma b'diavad. You can't even b'diavad have a tameh do the shechita. So the Gemara midirabanan. Gemara says no. This brisa that says v'shtamach v'shachat, that's just an asmachta, and it's only midirabanan that shchita should be b'tahirin. But ein achanami midaraisa, it could be with a, like we said, that it's b'lechatchila better to do it with a tar, but midaraisa it could be done with a tamei. Maishna smicha. So what's the reason? Gemara never really explained why smicha has to be with a tar. Its smicha is that the owner of the animal has to lean his hands on the animal. So where do we know that smicha has to be with it, someone who's tar? Because it says it has to be done l'fnei Hashem in the heichel. And smicha has to be done physically by the owner by leaning on it. If he's tamei, it's not possible for someone to lean without being in the Beis Hamikdash. And when he leans, he's gonna be a tamei that went into the Beis Hamikdash. So it must be bedafka by a tar. It's restricted only to a tar. Why you bring a raya from smicha? That smicha has to be a tar because it's done in the heichel. Sorry, I keep saying in the heichel. I don't mean in the heichel. I mean in the azara. I mean in the outside, in the yard. But it's also kodesh, and a tamei is not allowed to go in there. Shchita nami, it also says l'fnei Hashem. So how can you do the shchita? So Gemara.
I mean, why are we picking one or the other to be the rice and Rabbanan?
We're saying that why we bring a raya from smicha that it's also that it must be by a tar.
Our answer was with Rabbanan.
Whatever. So in the end we concluded that it was only an asmachta. But even this asmachta, what sense does it make to say we're learning out shchita from smicha? They both have the same reason why they have to be done with a tar. It's because it says l'fnei Hashem, and both of them, one would think, just like smicha has to be done physically, the shchita also has to be done physically. And it says l'fnei Hashem, that should mean that it has to be tar both on smicha and on shchita. So what are we learning out shchita from smicha? So, and for the Gemara, after the avid sakan arucha v'shachet, he could take a long knife. And by a knife, there's a way. By shchita, there's a way to do it without being physically present. Even if he's tamei, he could do it standing outside of the azara, sticking his knife in and doing the shchita in the azara. So the Gemara, smicha nami after the ma'ayel yadeh v'samach. Why can't you do the same thing by the smicha? Let him just put his hands in and do the smicha while he's standing outside. So only his hands will go into the azara. So you are looking and you're saying, what do you mean? If your hands are in, that means you went in. So that's going to be what we're going to be talking about. Kasavar bia mixer shmo bia. So the reason why he says you can't do that is because ein chanami. If a person puts his hand in while he's tamei, that's a problem. If even partially going into the Beis Hamikdash, even his tamei hands going into the Beis Hamikdash is a problem. So this is going to be a significant item of discussion. Whether when a person smicha, whether bia b'mixus is shma bia, partially going in, for somebody his tamei is considered it's going in, or do we just say since most of him is outside, we can ignore? It's not going to be a problem that he sticks his hand in. But this man Amr is saying bia b'mixus shma bia, so therefore it's possible to do a shchita. To do a smicha. It's not possible to do a smicha without causing a problem. So the Torah says l'fnei Hashem, it could even be, it must be by tahirim, because it's impossible to do it with someone who's not tar, and therefore we could learn out from there to shchita, because shchita could be done with a long knife, and it could be totally possible for a tamei to do it. But we learn out from the pasuk, from that smachta, that he shouldn't do it.
And how about something like Israel?
So what do you mean? What about Israel?
So Zar could do
that right? Yeah. The shchita.
But the smicha.
Zar always does the smicha. It's the owner who does the smicha. Yeah. But the question is if a tamei, the owner who's tamei can do the smicha. Some of the I don't know if it's all of them, but I know some of the smichas are both the kayan together with the owner. They put the hands on underneath the kayans and then they push together. Zok Gemara. Rav Chizda masni epcha. Rav Chizda had the exact opposite version of this brisa. B'samach v'shochat, ma shchita b'dahayr and af smicha b'dahayr. We learn out shchita from shchita to smicha, the opposite of the way we had said before. Maishna shchita d'chsev l'fnei Hashem, smicha nami. We have the same question. Smicha nami d'chsev l'fnei Hashem. On both of them it says l'fnei Hashem. So why is it better to learn out shchita first and then learn out from it to smicha? It's like, well, after the mal yadev is samich, because you couldn't stick your hand in. Shchita nami after the avet sak and arucha v'shachet. So the more hamani shemnat tamani he the tanya v'shachet has been abakal l'fnei Hashem v'loy hashoichet l'fnei Hashem. The Tanakama in this brisa says that there's no necessity that the one who's shechting be l'fnei Hashem. So he disputes the whole premise of this brisa and of this limud. But shemnat tamani I'm minayin sheyu yadav shel sheichet l'fnei min hanishchet. Where do we know that it's not just that the sheichet has to be there? He has to be all the way into the Beis Hamikdash. It has to be included. He has to be in the Azara. Tamalev v'shachet is ben abakal l'fnei Hashem. Sheichet is ben abakal yehei l'fnei Hashem. We darshan that the sheichet has to be entirely l'fnei Hashem. So we're going like there's no such thing as a sak and arucha, because the pasuk is telling you specifically that the sheichet, the one who's shechting, has to be mamash entirely inside the Beis inside the Azara when he does the shechita. So therefore, since obviously he's going to have to be tar in order to do that, we learn out from there to the saimech who can just stick his hands in, and l'chayr this is going according to the Manda Amar that biya b'miksus lo yishma biya. So that's why you learn out smicha from shechita. Amar Ula. Amar Ish Lakish. Tamei shehichnis yadei lefnim loika. A tamei that sticks his hands into the Azara gets malchus. Shenema b'chol kodesh leisiga. The Torah says, legabe isha or yoledes. It says shloishim yom u'shloish yom teisha b'dmei tahara. She's in a situation where she's you make tayar that she's tar, but there's certain restriction on her. The pasuk says she can't touch kachim and she can't go into the Beis Hamikdash until the end of these Yimei Tahar. So in Makish, the Gemara continues, Makish bi'al negia. So we see that going into the Beis Hamikdash is compared to touching. Ma negia b'mikdash shma negia. And certainly when it comes to touching, there's no such thing as I'm just going to touch it a little bit. If someone touches when he's tamei, he touches kachim, that's considered touching. Or vice versa. If he's tar and he touches something that's tamei, he touches a mace, that will make him tamei. There's no negia b'mixus. Every negia is a negia. Av bia b'mixus shmo bia. So we learn out from there, from the juxtaposition of bia, of going into the Beis Hamikdash, to negia, that any kind of bia, this is ulashita, and that's what we referred to before. Bia b'mixus is shmo bia. Even a little bit going in, it's like they say, right? You can't be a little pregnant. You can't have a little bit of a bia. Once you're into the Beis Hamikdash, you're in, and it's awesome. You get malchus. Eisver Rav Hashia Lula. Rav Hashia asks on Ula that he's saying this klal that bia b'mixus shma bia. So now we're going to have a case with a lot of factors. A mitzaira shechal shmina shelo aliyas be'erev haPesach. Someone who's mitzaira, he becomes tamei, and he has to wait till his mitzaras clears up, and he's got to wait 7 days. The seventh day he goes and he's taivel. After he's taivel, he's a tvul yom, and then the following day he has a bunch of korbanos he has to bring, and he needs to have matan dam on his thumb and on his ear. Let's just recall that for ourselves. There are 3 stages that are possible for a person to have in becoming tar. First, he's a tamei. So by mitzaira, for example, you have 3 stages. That first he's tamei, then he's taivel. After he's taivel, he becomes a tvul yom till the end of that day. He's waiting for the end of the day. After the end of the day, he becomes a mechusar kippurim because he still has to bring his karbanos on the 8th day. not every tumah has a stage of Mechusar Kippurim. For example, someone who's tamei mace doesn't bring any carbon. He gets the paraduma spritzed on him on the third and seventh day, but that's not a carbon. Once the seventh day comes and he's taivel, and the seventh day comes, he's free to go. But a Mitzayro has that stage of being a Mechusar Kippurim on the eighth day. So this person was a Mechusar Kippurim. His eighth day came out on Erev Pesach. Now, obviously, we're going to have an issue with him because he has to bring his carbon. First of all, he has to bring his carbon in order to get tar, the carbonus as a mitzayra, to make him tar from his tzaras. And if he successfully completes that, then he'll be tar and able to eat his Pesach that night. But then you throw another factor into the mix. In addition to his tumah of mitzayra, he was also raw keri, became tamei tumas keri, which just requires a tefillah and waiting for nightfall. B'tavel, and he was taivel for that keri. Amru chacham, afal pi she'ein tful yoim achar nichnas. So now we have a problem, because on the eighth day, the general procedure for a mitzayra is he goes into the shar nikner. He still is a mechusar kippurim. He's not fully off the hook. He has to bring his carbon, but he needs to have dam put onto his hands and his feet. So he goes into the shar nikner, which is the gate right near the azara, and he sticks his hands in. The dam of the asham that goes onto his hands is not allowed to leave the azara, and they spritz it onto his hands and onto his thumbs, and it goes on. I don't know, somehow they do it on his ear. I'm not sure how that happens. On his big toe, they do all these things while he's standing outside. Now, this is not a raya that be a mix of shlosh mabiyah, because this is biblically mandated. The Torah said that you got to do.
He's also not tamei.
He is tamei. He's a mechusar kippurim.
Mechusar Kippurim is different, right?
It's a lower level, but he's still not allowed to go into the azara. But this is what the Torah said you got to do. This is not even, as we're gonna come later on to the din of chotra and tchuya, the difference between something that is permissible. That's what the Torah wants you to do, right? Like we say, for example, cooking on Yom Tov, it's not duchuya. It's not that because of Yom Tov it's dachi. The Torah wants you to cook on Yom Tov. It's entirely mutter. Masha'en kein, for pikuach nefesh, Shabbos is tchuya. It's not. It's still better not to do it. You have to minimize it. But this is hutra. Okay. But we have an additional problem. He's also a keri. So this person needs, he's a tful yom for his keri. That means he has to wait for the evening. You did a tefillah, but he has to wait for evening to be tar from his keri. So amrucham av bi she'ein tful yom achar nichnes. Any other tful yom is not allowed to go into the azara. Zen nichnes. This one can stick his hand in and his foot in to get the dam for the mitzayra. Why? Because better that you can have an essay that has a kares, which is Pesach. He wants to be able to eat his Pesach that night, and someone who's mevatel, the essay of Pesach is being mevatel an essay sheyesh bakares, and b'daycha the essay she'ein bakares of a tful yoim for keri going into the Beis Hamikdash, or into the Machna Leviyah. A keri is not even allowed to go onto the Harabayis, forgetting about sticking his hand. Rabbi Yochanan, this is parenthetical. This is not really our raya. Rabbi Yochanan, dvar Torah afilu essay, but he'll just not have an essay. Shenemar v'yamad yeshav b'kal Yehuda v'Yishalayim Beis Hashem l'fnei Chatzor Chadasha. It was called the Chatzor Chadasha. He stood in front of Yeshafat, stood in front of the Yishalayim l'fnei Chatzor Chadasha. My Chatzor Chadasha, what does it mean? The new gate. They said a new takana. That the tful yoim can't go on to the harabayis, meaning in order for this person to go up to close to the Azara and stick his hand, then he has to go into the Harabayis, which is the Machna Leviyah. And they were geyser that a Tful Yom can't do so. So according to the Rabbi Yochanan, this whole thing is not a problem. It's only a Takanas Chachamim. It's not a Esa She'ein Bakaris. It's totally Muta Midarais. It's only the Rabbanan. So certainly the requirement of bringing the carbon Pesach will override the Rabbanan. But our issue really is with the previous mandam. We said it midaraisa. It's only it's eses she'ein bakaris, and it's dachui because of the Pesach, which is sheyesh bakaris. Vi amrit bias b'miktas shmo bia. So we're saying that going into the machna leviyah, a person a full yom from the kerry is not allowed to go onto the harabayis. He can't even get close to the gate because he's usher as a just a lav she'ein bakaris. But if we say that sticking his hands in is considered that he's going into the azara is not just a lav she'ein bakaris. That's a lav sheyesh bakaris. A tful yom sticking his hands, a tful yom going into the Beis Hamikdash itself is a lav sheyesh bakaris. Heichi ma'al yadav b'bahaynis. So again, see.
So asking we're swapping. We were worried about that. Say, you should allow him to.
Machna Leviyah, right? So there's back in the Mishkan there was the Machna Shechina, the Machna Leviyah, Machna Yisra. So a Mitzayris has to go out of all three of them. But after when he's a Mechusar Kippurim, then he's allowed to go into the Machna Leviyah and stick his hands into the Machna Shechina. In the Beis Hamikdash, the equivalent of the Machna Leviyah is the Harabayis, the area outside of the Azara, and the Azara is equivalent to the Machna Shechina. So we were concerned, how can this Tvul Yom for a kerry go on to the Harabayis? We said that it's a Esa She'ein Bakaris. So we said that it's still the Esa Sheyesh Bakaris of Pesach. In order to enable him, he has to get rid of. He's going to be the kerry's going to go away anyway at the end of the day. So it's not the kerry doesn't cause a problem with the Pesach. The only problem with the Pesach is the Mitzayr, but he's got a problem getting in to get his kapara to do his avoida for the Mitzayra, because he can't get in. He can't physically go into the Machna Leviyah when he's a kerry. So you say no, we'll let him do it because it's all for the purpose of getting rid of the Mitzayra so he could do his Pesach. Pesach is a Esa Sheyesh Bakar. So B'doicha, the loisa say of a kerry going into the Machna Leviyah and getting close enough to do his avodah Mitzayra and letting him do the Pesach. But the Gemara asks, if you hold Biva Mixed Shma Bia, it's not just Machna Leviyah that we're worried about. We also have the kerry sticking his hands into the Beis Hamikdash, into the Azara. And that's not just an Esa She'ein Bakars, that's an Esa Sheyesh Bakars. That's Gemara's question. He said the question that you're asking brings you, it carries its own burden, it answers it itself. He says, no, over here, since a Mitzayra, like we said, it's Chutra, that he's allowed to stick his hands in to do his avodah of Mitzayra, that will also include with it that he's going to be able to do as well the Thomas Kerry, the Tvul Yom of Kerry will also be Hotar together with the Hatter of Mitzayra. It's going to be like a Migu. Once we're Mater one Tumah, we're also Mater the other one together with it. Amar of Yosef.
Does that mean a regular Baal carry we wouldn't, but because he's got leniency, so we're already just allowing it? It's not just a regular Baal carry, we're saying. Kind of lumping everything together. His status.
We're saying, well, I think it's only because of the fact that there's a Pesach here, that we say since it's going to be Hutter on that day, in order to enable him to become mutter from his tsaras, he can go into the Beis HaMikdash, he can stick his hands in. So we'll also lump in together with that the carry. So it's not that, so it won't be, Itaka won't be usher, it won't be considered a bia betumah. It's a little hard to, there's a lot of mafarshim on this. There's, I think, Brisker Rav's on this, because it's a little hard to understand. If it's chutter, so why does it have to be bedafka for Erev Pesach? Why can't it be every time? Okay, unfortunately, we're going to have to stop over here. I really thought we were going to do a blot and a half, but I should learn better by now. I should know better by now.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a good day.